We love Zencaster because it allows us to record the audio for our podcast and create the video segments we use for our weekly Sister Scoop episodes. Zencaster has helped us make content capture simple.
It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencaster. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests, and feel a sense of zen knowing Zencaster's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable.
If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencaster's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast in one place and distribute it to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations.
Just go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code SistersAssembled, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Katie and I are always hungry, and one snack we both love is beef jerky. That's why we're so excited to tell you about one of our favorite jerky brands, Matt Hat Jerky.
Matt Hat's delicious taste makes it a great snack, and the variety of flavors, including original, black truffle, and my personal favorite, roasted garlic, means there's a flavor for everyone. Plus, it's local to the area where we grew up in, which we just love.
Use the link in the show notes below to get some Matt Hat Jerky for yourself, and make sure to use our coupon code SistersAssembled for 10% off. Hello and welcome to Sisters Assembled, your home for all things MCU. And it is wild to say this, but we are covering the season 1 finale of Daredevil Born Again today. There will be spoilers galore. I know we don't always consistently give verbal spoiler warnings, but we are coming at you with one today because it is the end of a season and a lot happened and there's a lot to talk about, but we arrived here very quickly. I'm not sad that we're here because show seasons are hard, but at the same time, overall it was enjoyable. We will get into how we felt about that more as we go through the episode. Lots to talk about. I'm going to turn it to Katie because she's going to kick us off.
Yes, I am going to start by saying my only complaint, which isn't even about the episode, it's just my complaint overall that I complained about in episode 8. I still don't know what the middle 3 or 4 episodes were meant to do for this show. And I think actually watching episodes 8 and 9, now 9, really confirmed for me I don't understand what those middle 3 episodes were. I think it just made it even weirder to me that they happened because now they just feel like a fever dream because 1 and 2 were so connected to 8 and 9 and I just don't know where the rest of the plot happened. Whatever. Stupid complaint, I know, but I just kind of want to put it out there.
It's not stupid though, because here's the thing. I felt the exact same way. If you had done an entire season that was based on the plot line that they had done in 1, 2, 8, and 9, I would have enjoyed it. Did I enjoy episodes 3 through 7? Yes, but they did not belong with the episodes that bookended them. So, when I'm looking at the show as a whole and I'm saying, how did I feel about Daredevil Born Again season 1? I can tell you I liked episodes individually, maybe with the exception of 5. I liked episodes individually. I thought they were well done. However, as a whole, it did not tell a cohesive story because they filmed 2 different shows and then thought it was okay to add the reshoots to the beginning and the end when it had a completely different plot than the original episodes that they filmed. And we're assuming the new is the ends and old is the middle. But either way, you can tell where the groupings were and where the boundaries were.
Great example. The cop who apparently killed Hector. Weirdest afterthought ever.
Doesn't even have a name.
He doesn't even have a name that I know of. And also, what was his motive? Why? Just because he was a cop that favored and loved, the Punisher and looked up to him and he didn't like Hector for what? We didn't even meet this guy before the trial. We didn't even meet this guy till an episode 2 after the trial. At least Powell, I could have been I get it. It would have been okay, I kind of saw it coming, but at least I get it. This guy remained nameless, at least to my knowledge. I didn't even know he was a factor in any of this. And then they just were you're the one who killed Hector. And I'm oh, okay. Thanks for trying to bookend that. Thumbs up.
Well, and again, it was I think a few episodes ago, I made the prediction that it was Buck because we saw that he clearly knows how to handle a weapon. That would, and I'm not saying it's just because it was my theory, but like that even would have been better because then at least you have a direct tie to Kingpin and you can see how that is tied to his anti vigilante rhetoric. But no, you picked a semi random cop who, yes, he'd been in a few scenes. We see him get recruited onto the task force, sure.
But he kills Hector before any of that even happens.
Right. And we barely know his name. He's just this like reoccurring face, essentially, in this. Cause, like, I mean, yes, he's a character also, but like not named. And then we're supposed to believe that he killed Hector and that's supposed to be some sort of appropriate resolution. It's like, no. Hector as a character deserved to be he didn't deserve to be killed, but if he was going to be killed, he deserved to have had it done by someone who was notable.
Yeah.
And to have him just be killed by a random cop is so it's an afterthought. Like it's like they realized in episode 9, oh crap, if we're going to add this, if we're going to add these new episodes to the old stuff, I guess we should probably answer that mystery of who killed Hector. Like, I'm so glad you decided to throw us that little bone right at the end.
No, that's exactly what it was, though. That was my point. That's why it's such a great example of what you were saying. So I think as the series as a whole, you described it well, and I think there's very clear examples on how it was very disjointed within itself.
Yeah.
However, episode 9 was really, really good, and it did exactly what it needed to do because did we not keep talking about, we don't need a resolution because we know there's a season 2 coming. So it did what it needed to do to set up for a wild season 2 that is going to be coming around the corner, hopefully by next year already, because as we know, they're filming. That is what it did. It made me stressed. I was watching it while working, and there was one scene in particular that I gasped audibly, and I was like, hope nobody just heard that, because I was like, oh my God. Like, it was a scary scene. It was one of those that just makes you very uncomfortable. But it shows you what Kingpin and this anti-vigilante task force and everything else, it shows you the really dark side of humanity. And so I think this episode did such a great job at, well, maybe not wrapping up all prior 8 episodes because, like I said, pretty much the whole middle chunk was just a completely different show to some degree. It did a great job of wrapping up where we started in the season and setting us up for, like I said, a really crazy ride for season 2.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I would say of all the episodes, I think 9 and 1 were the strongest.
I agree.
And I think the level of hype that I felt after 1 was ridiculous. Even after 2. I would say 1 and 2 because I also have trouble differentiating because they came out on the same day. So like let's bundle 1 and 2. I would say 1 and 2 together were very strong. 9 very strong. Like to the point where I was here in my PJs literally like standing up 2 feet from my television, like doing a happy dance because I was just the feeling of excitement was so strong and so palpable. And even in the middle episodes that I enjoyed, I felt like this was cool, but it never quite reached the level of excitement that I had it during 1 and 2. And then they hit us with 9, and I was like, all right, cool. I see that you can reach it again. Now, what I would challenge them to do, and of course they're listening to me, but now what I would challenge them to do is in season 2, I want you to more consistently hit that level. Like, I don't expect you to hit it every episode, but 3 out of 9, let's maybe aim for 5 or 6. Like, that would be cool if you can make me feel that way through more of the season.
Yeah, I think some of that was because they decided to go the route where he was not Daredevil for such a big chunk of it.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I think they swung for the fences. Let's say that. Like, they tried. I'm not sure that was the strongest way to come out of the gate when you're softly, but not really, but also softly rebooting a show. Because remember, think about the Netflix show. He's suited up almost every episode.
Yeah.
We're seeing him on the streets, involved in Kingpin's empire in season 1, involved with the Punisher and everything in season 2. Like, we're seeing all of this happening pretty consistently. I would think it's actually pretty rare. I mean, even in the Defenders, even if he's not fully suited up, he's sitting there putting his thing over his eyes fighting, like he's still very heavily involved. And so I think going the route of going a little quieter, I didn't mind the episodes, but I definitely think it was an interesting take when this was what you were gearing up to, because it never really, I kept thinking about this when I was watching it. I kept being like, while I understand on a base level how we got to this, and I could explain to you the steps of how we got to this, the stakes during the entire season never felt like we were getting to this, if that makes sense.
100%. And I think the interesting piece here is what ended up being kind of the linchpin of the whole season was the Red Hook project, right? And that was the one through
Which had me
line.
all thrown off because I was like, I was not following this port story close enough at any point, clearly. Like, I was like,
Yeah.
if this was what the whole thing was on, why am I just feeling like I'm barely learning about it in season 9? Or, I'm sorry, in episode 9.
Yeah. I mean, look, that was definitely a choice to go that route. I do think in some respects it was very interesting that they chose to make that like this subtle through line because even through all the episodes that felt like they didn't go together. So we talked about the chunk of 4 at the bookends and we talked about the middle 5. Even through all 9 episodes, I feel like we talked about the port in almost all of them. So that was the one piece that made it all the way through. However, to what you were saying about the stakes, and maybe they were trying to just give us like an aha gasp moment, but I'm not gonna lie, the laws around free ports are not really the things that are going to make me gasp. However, to give them the benefit of the doubt here, I will say the fact that Kingpin has been kingpinning the whole time and we didn't even know,
No,
even though
that was
we've been
good.
following, that was a master stroke. Like, what is it? A leopard can't change its spots or a tiger can't change its stripes, one of the two, maybe both. He says to Vanessa, I ran to help the city, but I couldn't help that I saw this opportunity on the side and I just went and did what I had to do. And those people, the elites that he was asking for money, they were calling him on it, which is fascinating. So I thought, even the port itself is kind of boring. Like, I don't really care about maritime law or whatever you would call that. The fact that it represents something so critical to Kingpin's character and then serves the dual function as the one unifying piece between all 9 episodes, I will give them a round of applause for that one. I will give them some kudos.
Well, I knew the port was important because that's the thing as mayor he was all like up in arms about, other than vigilantes.
Right.
So I understood there was an important piece to that, but I think it was done so low key
Yeah.
that I was like, why do I care about this port? Like, I don't understand why we're caring about this port. And then obviously in this episode, like I said, I didn't even realize I was supposed to know the name of the port. That's how little I was paying attention to the port part of the story. So then,
To be fair, I live in New York, so I know what Red Hook in Brooklyn is.
well, but then they started talking. They were like, "Oh, Red Hook is like." I think it hit me when Karen and Matt found the thing about it being a free port, and they're like, "It's all about Red Hook and all this stuff." And I was like, "Red Hook is the port." Like, I was like, "Oh," like I'm like, "Who's Red Hook? What's Red Hook? What?" Like I'm like not following half of this storyline the entire time, and then that's when it hit me, and I was like, "Oh, I get it." To your point, stakes wise, I was like, I mean, I guess like you're gonna create your own little free country or whatever they're doing to essentially allow all sorts of crime and whatever. That's the underlying like goal. Fine. That didn't do it for me. It was more the fact that because I was not fully following the port story the whole time, just realizing that it actually was the most important part of the story, I was like, oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. Like, how many times did we not talk about the port in any of our
Have we
episodes?
ever really talked about it other than when I think I was making fun of him for being really passionate about it and his one advisor was like, "Okay, let's calm down. Like you still have to like go through red tape." Like I think I was just making fun of him. That was it.
Yeah, I think maybe we mentioned it in passing, especially like when we were talking about the whole fundraiser aspect where he was asking for money and they were calling him on his BS. Like that, I think was the only time. And what you were saying when we were like, hey, guy, you can't just like slash red tape. That's like not how government works. That's it. Like, never in a million years was I tracking or could I have ever guessed, like, he's going to be able to make a city state out of this. There are literally no laws. He's going to be a king, essentially, in the port of Red Hook. And then on top of that, he's going to actually build infrastructure there so that he can literally just reap the benefits of that and continue to enrich himself in a completely legal way that is completely unimpeachable from a mayoral standpoint. It's brilliant, if not sinister.
I mean, I agree. I think I do applaud for the fact that I never understood we were going that direction.
Yeah.
But I also think maybe some of that is because we went 17 other directions this season. So I
Yeah.
can't tell if it was strategic or not. But either way, I think the port's a very interesting factor in all of this. But I do think some really crazy other crap was happening. And I think we need to start with, honestly, Frank.
Hi, Frank. Welcome back.
I mean, first and foremost, when you're watching something, and maybe you guys don't, because depending on, maybe you guys just watch things for fun and you don't have to actually analyze them. But like, we obviously sit here and we talk about it after the fact. And then I always write a blog post after the fact and I analyze stuff and I do my research and whatever. And I was sitting there, and as things were happening with Frank, and Frank was just like taking out his little fanboys. I'm not going to say it on live because it's going to be in the blog post, but like I had the perfect caption just like pop into my brain while I'm watching all of this happen because Frank was having the time of his life killing these little fanboys. Like he literally was like, this is the best moment of my life.
Well, I was so shook by the level of boldness for them to wear his symbol when they are trying to kill him.
The
was
art of
bonkers.
having him in that chair and you see the back of his head and he's surrounded by the skulls.
Cinematography.
Yeah, I was like, that was a beautiful shot. But I also had to, I mean, okay, let's start with just when they were obviously in Matt's apartment, they weren't expecting Frank to be there because
Right.
they even, like, at the end, the guy who apparently killed Hector was the one who was like, Frank's here to his radio. Like, they were not anticipating Frank being there. Obviously, Matt wasn't. We find out Karen's actually the one who called him and was like, you need to get there. You got to help Matt.
Yeah.
You know, love Karen for that. Love her. We'll talk about that, but love her coming back. Like, she was actually pretty bad A during this episode.
She was.
And she's not always like that. She's usually kind of like
a wet blanket. I have a lot of complicated feelings about Karen.
Yes, but I will also say this. I'm going to say this first. She's a very, very smart lady. However, she makes the dumbest, absolute stupidest decisions I've ever seen and puts her life in danger all the freaking time. And then it's like, what? I ended up, abducted by the hand. And I'm like, girl.
She's very smart in that she's analytical, but she kind of occasionally lacks common sense and is very impulsive.
Yes.
And like, then it bothers me to no end when she harps on Matt for being Daredevil, yet she does stupid crap on the side. And I'm like, Karen.
And she can't defend herself.
No, I'm like, those in glass houses should not throw rocks. And that's why I like struggle with Karen sometimes. Though I would agree, this episode, she was just consistently a baddie. And I was like, you know what, Karen, if this is your new character arc, I am here for it. Prove me wrong.
Yes, I agree. And we'll get to Karen a little bit in a second. But I appreciated Frank coming back because I think I also said early in the season, I expected him, and granted, this is when I thought Muse was going to be a bigger part of this season.
Oh, how we were wrong.
Yeah, right? I expected him to be in this more.
Yeah.
Like, I thought we'd see him at least in the last episode or two, and I said that. I'm glad we did.
Yeah.
Because I love Frank first and foremost, and I just felt like if all we get is like episode 4 of him having, granted, a very needed conversation with Matt, but if that's all we get, that's a lot of bull. Like, don't put him in the trailers and all that crap just for me to get him for a total of maybe 2 minutes on the screen. That's ridiculous to me.
It's also very random and very forced, if that's how you choose to do that.
It was, and it wasn't to me like a cameo kind of thing. It was too forced if that's what was going to happen. Plus, though, if you're going to feed this whole like Punisher fanboy storyline, you can't really tell it without the Punisher.
Yeah.
So I was like, we deserve to see him come in here. It's weird to not. So I was really glad to see him come back there. I was glad to see him be the one that goes into the cop. Well, they were at Red Hook. They were calling it home base, essentially. And he went in there by himself and he took a lot of them out. I mean, even Pal said, I lost a lot of good men because of you here today. But then they're trying to recruit him, which I was like, this is wild.
Read a room.
This is wild. No, I was like, oh my God. And obviously, by the end of all this, we see Frank is one of the vigilantes that's being put in a cage.
That shot, I just want to pause there. That shot of the Fisks walking through the aisle of the cages, and you see Jack, and I didn't really recognize anyone else, but like Jack was the first one where I was like, oh my God. And then it pans to Frank, and you're like, oh my God, he's literally keeping them like caged animals.
Well, I was waiting for like Luke, Jessica, because they're well known.
There were multiple times where I was waiting for Luke and Jessica, and we will get to that, but yes.
Yeah. They're well known vigilantes, essentially.
Yeah, but also both of them they're powered in a way that Matt and Frank are not, in that they're super, super strong. And I just don't think the cops have the ability yet being the operative word, to go after someone of those types of abilities. Matt's heightened senses, and obviously he's very skilled at martial arts, but he's no stronger than the average man. Frank is literally just an average man who's very, very good with weapons.
And won't die.
Yeah, literally. I mean, the man had to have been shot like 4 times this episode alone.
Well, they were blanks, though. They said it.
Oh, did they? I missed that.
Yeah, I don't know initially. That first shot when he shot in Matt's apartment, I'm not sure, because they were trying to kill Matt, so I would imagine those weren't. But I do know when he went into the cops' like stronghold, I do know somebody at one point mentions that like blanks only or something.
Interesting. I totally missed that. But either way, I think that's why we didn't see some of the more high-powered vigilantes, because they are just not, the task force is not at a place yet where they're able to go after enhanced individuals in that way, though I would have liked to have seen it. Like, I would have been very excited.
Yeah, I was definitely keeping my eye out on seeing bigger people.
Yeah.
I think the other thing was like, for me, Jack is not, we saw him be the swordsman once, so I don't really have that same connection.
Yeah.
Though it was kind of, it was nice to still have that through line and have like a reoccurring character kind of fill that void. I do just want to finish out talking about Frank specifically, though, because there's so much that happened. And I want to close one chapter before we kind of get into another. The big thing after Frank's reappearance and his part he plays in this episode, taking out a bunch of his fanboys, which again, loved to see. I was like, he is living for this. Like, I just know he's enjoying this. The end credit.
Yeah.
Which is the only one we got. And we do know we're going to get a Punisher special presentation, which I imagine is kind of what this is going to lead right into. Buddy's out here tricking cops into putting their arms in his cell so that he can probably kill them in the long run. I'm sure that's exactly what he was doing.
Yeah.
You know what? Frank is unhinged and I love him for it.
I mean, Frank's level of just like does not care is, I don't know that I aspire to be at that level, but I do admire him for it. And if I'm going to, put a line in the sand in terms of a prediction for how this special presentation goes, because I know that John Bernthal, I think he's writing, helping write it. He's really excited about telling this particular story, whatever that story might be. If I had to hazard a guess, I would say that it is going to be the storyline of the misappropriation of the Punisher symbol. I think that's what the groundwork has laid in this season. That's why he was only sprinkled and he wasn't, truly added in as a recurring character. I mean, besides not wanting to overshadow Matt and his literal rebirth, but I think that those were the seeds that were planted, and his escape is now he's got a vengeance. Not only did they steal his symbol, they locked him up. They then tried to recruit him because, as he said, you have no idea my pain. These people identify with him, but they don't even understand at all what he's been through. And I can only imagine how that's truly like having that conversation, though he was kind of ambivalent to them at the beginning of the season, but seeing what they've done now with his symbol, the way they act, how they internalize his path that is so different from theirs, I think has only incensed him. And I think that's what we're going to see in the special presentation is his basically mission to hunt them down. I don't think he's going to be successful, because all the way at least, because obviously we're going to see the task force again in season 2 of Born Again. But I do think it's a really nice kind of middle course between season 1 and season 2.
I agree. And I actually really like that they're going to go this route. This comic only came out in like 2022. And I don't think it's hard to, or I don't think our job is hard here to sit here and say, it came out for a reason. Marvel wrote it for a reason. It pulls from a lot of real life situations. And so the comic was essentially calling out, what we're kind of seeing, like I said, in real life. And so I do think it's kind of interesting. We're seeing it play out, honestly, so quickly
Yeah.
on the big screen, although I think just as fittingly. But it is a really powerful comic. And for who Frank is and everything, I think it's cool, although sad because again, it's drawing from real life inspiration, but I think it's so cool to kind of have this moment to be able to talk about things on like a very deep level because there's a lot more to this than just being like, "Oh, well the cop stole his symbol." Like that's not the point.
Right.
There's a lot of symbolism here. There's a lot of deeper, whatever. So, I do think it's going to be a really interesting story to tell fully and allow us to follow Frank completely through it rather than, it's kind of being to your point, it was introduced here
Mhm.
and now we're going to see it get played actually to what we want to see get played to with Frank at the helm. It's going to be very, very interesting and I'm excited for it. And to your point, it's going to really help fill a gap because while he won't be entirely successful, I mean, this episode alone, he killed at least 20 of them
Oh
that
my
we
god,
saw.
yeah. Yeah.
So I think even just kind of seeing him in general go after it, and I think this would also be interesting because I think this is where we'll see the debut of the new Punisher symbol,
Yep.
which I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast, but I definitely talked about one of the blog posts when we were discussing this before. I think we will see the new symbol that Marvel has chosen to go with it since that comic line. So I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see Frank. I was not like in love with the Punisher seasons, but I think the special presentation is like the perfect way to tell this rather than doing a whole 9 or 13 season, or I'm sorry, episode season.
I agree. And I also think that if you are just a surface level kind of someone who's following the Punisher and you just kind of say, for example, didn't watch his own seasons and you just know him from season 2 of Daredevil, then it's easy to kind of just take him at face value. He's this, former soldier and he's really good at killing people. But what's really cool about Frank is, yes, that is who he is at the surface, but he's also a guy who's dealing with deep PTSD. He has all this trauma from his family being murdered and, being betrayed by one of his best friends. And at the same time, he has become this symbol that has been taken to mean something so different than what he means it to be. And you're able to tell this really, really deep story with a character that at first glance is just very straightforward. And I don't want to say shallow because that's not the right word, but doesn't have at face value some of these deeper meanings like some other characters, but he really does. And I'm excited they're going to take the time, hopefully, to explore this if this is the route that they go, because I think it's very rich for strong and powerful conversation. I think that's why John Bernthal's so excited about it, if this is, in fact, the subject matter of the special presentation.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on. Ironically, like I don't mean to seem rude towards Matt, but like I don't feel like there's a lot from Matt directly that I felt in this episode other than, Daredevil suited back up. I felt like actually a lot of the things going on around him were more impactful than him necessarily.
I mean, I see what you're saying, but I also think he finally I actually think, and maybe I'm just projecting my wishes and hopes, but I think that Matt may have taken a step forward in that evolution that we've been asking for him. I think the conversation he had with Karen in Josie's before he goes out to talk to what I thought was going to be a very different audience, and we'll get to that in a second. But when he goes out at the end and you have this whole monologue and you're seeing all of the craziness that's going on in New York, and he's talking about how, we're New Yorkers, we get through things and blah 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 blah. But that conversation he has with Karen is so important because she's saying what he needs to hear, but what is also the truth, and that Foggy, and remember, Foggy's the catalyst for everything. Foggy knew who he was, the good, the bad, the ugly, and he still loved him. So it, I think, is going to open the door for maybe next season Matt to be able to truly embrace both sides of himself, the good and the bad, the dark and the light, the things that he's been fighting for all these seasons and really just like literally taking 2 steps back to every 1 step forward. But I think Karen almost gave him permission to start that acceptance process. And maybe this is wishful thinking, but I'm hopeful that that is work that he does. And we will get to see a different Matt, or a Matt in progress in season 2.
I will share your hope because, quite frankly, if you enter your 5th season on TV and you are not really growing much as a character, I think we have a problem. And so I would hope that we are going to go a different direction with his character in the way of growth. I think he's going to be put through something. And I mean, granted, now, like Foggy's death was something that, is nothing in comparison to other things in life. So maybe that's why we were hoping he would really like grow from this, which he did not. But maybe now, to your point, like maybe he feels like now he can, and now he can embrace those two sides that are always so at war with each other. Because quite frankly, he's about to face something that, I mean, it's unheard of and it's terrifying.
The scale.
And I think it's so interesting because New York, on like a larger scale, has been this epicenter for so many heroes for so long, right? And something like this affects every single one of them. I don't just mean our Defenders universe. I don't just mean Spider-Man because he was thrown out there on the whim early on in the season. I mean, like, your Doctor Strangers are getting just as affected by this because vigilante or not, technically, it doesn't really matter. This is the city at war. Like, it's not the law of the vigilantes, it's the martial law part of it. It's the curfews. It's stuff like that that is going to greatly affect how the city even like functions.
That part. And look, maybe it's because The Last of Us is back and I am like really feeling the apocalyptic vibes right now. But that part, as a New Yorker, I was like, that's insane. I could not imagine the idea of a curfew in New York City or the idea of martial law. I mean, the scene where we see those cops shoot that guy who had his hands up and they pulled the cap down over his face and they said it was justified, he was a vigilante. That is just a microcosm of what they have been given carte blanche ability to do under this new mayoral, I don't know if you want to call it executive order. I don't know if that's what the mayor does, but like if that's what it's legally called. But that is terrifying.
That's the scene I was talking about at the very beginning of the episode.
Yeah, chilling.
Because I was uncomfortable, which is a good thing, obviously, because it means it's making its point.
Yeah.
But again, a lot of this season, we talked about it even throughout it, has been calling out some current events.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm not going to sit there and shy away from the fact that that's one of them.
Yeah.
So I think watching that happen, and then when he sat there and was like, to your point, he went, he's a vigilante and hands could be wiped clean. That was terrifying.
Yeah.
Because it's the point where, say the guy lived, it didn't really matter if he could have fought back in the court of law. If they just said he was a vigilante, therefore his life meant nothing, he means nothing. I mean, regardless, it was disgusting to watch. But again, the story has to be told.
I mean, it was incredibly powerful. Think of what vigilante is in the real world. There are a few examples of what calling someone, insert word for vigilante, means in day-to-day life and against current events. We're US based, so especially here in the United States, it was a direct parallel. It was a direct commentary on current events. And we talked about how this show has not shied away from doing that. And this was a shining example of that.
This whole episode is, though.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Watch everything that's, and maybe getting right into Kingpin's the answer, because Kingpin was this episode. Everything he did was this episode, was the crux of this episode. And we are sitting here in real time watching him take over New York. And maybe I was so uncomfortable because, hits a little close to home, because this is kind of happening. And like, you're watching things that should be, we watched the police chief who was going to go talk out against him and get, whatever the right checks and balances, watched his head literally get, I don't even want to talk about it. Actually, we're going to move on. We all watched it. We all know what happened.
You know what we're referencing.
Didn't need to see that.
That was a lot.
But we watched that happen. We watched somebody who's actively trying to do the right thing and oppose something he saw going so wrong. And he was murdered for it. He was silenced. You're seeing these people disappear and be punished constantly who are trying to do the right thing. The vigilantes are being punished for what they're doing, even though they're ironically the good guys, especially as you're turning your police force into, I mean,
A kill squad.
yeah, essentially.
Well, and then speaking of the commissioner, I think what is ripe for analysis is Sheila.
I was so I thought she was better than that.
She knows what's right and wrong. She knows what she did.
I thought she was better than that. She's doing it to protect her job?
Well, and probably herself. I mean, let's be real. We saw what happened to the commissioner.
Yes.
I'm not
but
defending
let's
the
be
action,
real.
but I can, from that perspective, I can understand.
This woman has known things have been going off the rails for episodes now.
Since he first took office.
Well, even when he made the kid deputy mayor of communications, whatever he made him, and she was like, hold on, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But she has said it early on. She sat here through all these mayors. She was an advisor for all of them. And they all come and go, and she's always there. And yes, at this point, maybe some of it is her life, but she didn't have to do that.
Oh, I totally agree.
She could have had that conversation and never record. Like, she chose to record that conversation and then turn it in. And at that point, you're choosing the power you're getting. Even if you feel guilty by it, there's plenty of people who are sitting back and watching this happen and choosing to go along with it, maybe not fully playing a big part in it. Oh, I'm not really doing anything, but you're not talking out against it, and you're making sure others aren't either.
Well, and that's why she is so interesting, because you can play devil's advocate up, down, and sideways about her, about everyone in that administration who is just doing their job. But when your job is turning the lights off in the city so that the mayor can declare a state of emergency and manufacture one when one did not exist. I mean, that too, that part. And I'm gonna call on being a New Yorker again. I know I've said it like 1,000 times, but so much of that is so scary, because the idea of a blackout in New York is terrifying. I've never lived through one, knock on wood, because I am, sincerely hoping there isn't one. I will be double bolted inside my apartment 4 days on end if there is one. But that is terrifying. And that is leaving the opportunity for rampant crime and just chaos, which we saw play out. And he chose to make that opportunity to serve his own ends, not only in, keeping Bullseye in New York, and I definitely want to talk about him, but, keeping him in New York, but then also to serve his narrative about crime and how that relates to vigilantes, and just the abuse of power was insane and scary and horrifying. And insert a negative adjective, it probably fits. But you're right, this was Kingpin's crowning achievement. We have seen him succeed to levels that he has never done so before. People are comparing him to Thanos and Avengers level threats because of what he's been able to do in arguably one of the most powerful cities in the nation.
The comparison to Thanos is crazy when you think of what Kingpin symbolizes.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, this whole episode, like, I'm the type of person who enjoys a good doomsday movie. Like, London Has Fallen, White House Has Fallen, my fave. Like, I ride or die for those types of movies. This whole thing had me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because of how it was happening. And again, because it hits a little close to home. Okay? A little bit. And it really had me uncomfortable about the nature of what was going on in this and how easily it happened.
Yeah. How slippery the slope.
Yes. But you brought up Bullseye. And I actually had a thought during the episode, because I was like, this man is at large.
Yeah.
Like, not found after he tried to kill Kingpin. Bet Matt's probably hitting himself now that he freaking took the bullet for him. Even he was like, I don't know why I did it. Everybody's trying to figure out why you did it.
Deep down, they like respect each other, and neither one of them wants to admit it because it's acknowledging something about themselves that they don't want to admit. And that's why this continues to work.
No, you know what I think it is? I mean, I agree. But you know what I actually think would be the craziest thing? Matt has edged killing somebody his entire time as Daredevil. And he hasn't done it. I mean, theoretically, I sit there and I'm like,
There's no
nobody's
way.
died of their injuries. Like, there's no shot. But let's just say, I guess, theoretically, to Matt's knowledge, he hasn't killed anybody. The most symbolic person he could kill for his first death would be Kingpin.
Yeah.
After all of this, it would be Kingpin. And I think that is the only way their story will ever end. And I mean, it's going to have to.
Yeah.
We talked about it during one of the other episodes. Like, while it's a great protagonist, antagonistic, like, they have a great rivalry and everything else. And to your point, they respect each other in this weird way. They're gonna need to kill each other to end it.
Yeah.
And obviously, Matt's going to have to come out on top or we'll never have a Daredevil again.
Yeah.
That's just a fact. So I do think with all the lead up to the fact that Matt's going to kill someone someday, it's there constantly. They are constantly talking about it. Even Frank again brought it up in this episode. Like, I think it's going to have to be Kingpin.
Yeah.
And I think it would be not the best death, but I think it would make the most sense, you know? Like, it would just tell the most brilliant story.
It would be the most impactful by leagues and miles.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk about Bullseye in the sense that when I realized he was still at large and then we got that flashback at the very beginning of the episode, my inner feelings are he's going to help Matt.
I thought so too. And I still think that there is going to be an element of collaboration between the two of them. We have seen Wilson Bethel and Charlie Cox shooting scenes together as Bullseye and Daredevil as season 2 has continued to roll on. In some of the stills, they look like they are collaborating. Now, maybe that could be like cameras aren't rolling and like it's literally just Matt and Wilson living their lives. But in others, it does look like they're potentially Bullseye is chasing Matt. Now, a quick clip that someone captured, from the set is not going to tell the whole story. But I do think that there's going to be, yes, some element of collaboration because the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Exactly.
But at the same time, the death of Foggy is going to sit there between them until Foggy comes back and he was in witness protection because I still think that that is the storyline that they are going for.
I think the death of Foggy will sit between them, yes. But on the other hand, I think there's the aspect of Matt now knowing he didn't just kill Foggy to kill Foggy. He was paid literally pretty much to do it, essentially, and he knows who it was. And so I think that adds to the enemy of my enemy.
Yeah.
Because who put the hit on him?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, what if Frank had been hired? Would Frank have obviously been the one to do it? No. But, I mean, quite frankly, Bullseye to me was a means to an end. Unfortunately, Vanessa knew that was the way to do it. It's not like Bullseye came out of here trying to kill Foggy just to kill Foggy. Like, that wasn't what happened, and Matt knows that.
Right.
I also think when you're where you're at this point in the city, I think the last thing you can do is hold a grudge over that when the entire city is blowing up and you're both being hunted.
Yeah.
Because that is what they both have to keep in mind is that they are considered vigilantes. They are being hunted avidly. And that's not even for the fact that who they are. Like, that doesn't even go on the fact that we're talking about Bullseye and Daredevil. Like, they alone for being vigilantes are on that list. But now because of the roles they play and everything else in Kingpin and Vanessa's lives, they're really high on that list. So I would like to see them actually work together. I think that could be really interesting.
I agree.
I'm going to sound annoying about season 2, but I kind of hope it's a little like intense with the sense of like, I want Jessica Jones in it. I want Luke Cage. I want him to work with Frank and Bullseye. Like, bring them all on. That's what we deserve to see, because if this is what you're going to do, you can't live in a bubble here.
Well, let's talk about the wider vigilante community, because there were 2 moments, and we talked about one already. There were 2 moments where that was when I first got off my couch, because when he comes out those double doors, those French doors at Josie's, and he's talking about, I'm going to get my own team together. And they panned, and yes, it was Cherry and some of the detectives that we have seen throughout the season, which I appreciated. But the fact that we did not have a singular shot of Jessica Jones, of Luke Cage, I was like, what are you doing? That would have been the most insane cameo to have them added as a season finale cameo to then work with Matt in season 2. And that was so, I was mad. And then when you went to what we talked about in the cages and you didn't have them again, which those cages would not have held Luke and Jessica. But like, even then, I was like, that could have been a much less exciting moment, but still an exciting moment to add them in. And I like what you were saying about this cannot be a vacuum. This is going to affect Luke. This is going to affect Jessica. I think Frank's already in it up to his knees and, he's there. But I mean, even what's his face, the other one who,
Iron Fist.
yes, thank you. I'm so sorry, but like that show is, I mean, arguably just tragic. Especially, like, I liked season 1, but I keep saying it, season 2 is just bad. But you could even add him in. I actually think he and Luke have a really fun banter if you see Luke Cage season 2. Either way, there are a lot of heroes who were affected. I do think that there might be some merit to that rumor that Matt's going to be leading a group of vigilantes. I think that that's not completely off base, and I would actually be very into seeing that. I think it's a great way to then backdoor reintroduce Luke and Jessica, however you want to do Iron Fist, because technically Colleen is Iron Fist now. Like, Danny doesn't even have the mantle anymore. But however you want to backdoor at least those two characters in, you can do that and then give them their subsequent seasons the same way that you're kind of doing it with Frank, in that he's now going to have his own special presentation because he was in Daredevil. Daredevil is the root of everything when it comes to the Defenders. It all started with Daredevil. So it makes sense then for him to bring everyone together to really lead the charge against Kingpin and his abuse of power.
Yeah, and I think like that's what you were setting up too, right? Was that not the point when you're like, I need a team? Like, no offense, but your regular run of the mill New Yorker isn't it? You need more. And I don't mean to be that person, but don't name drop the one who's like a spider.
Yeah.
And then you don't have Spider-Man. I mean, this is too large scale. And I think you have to, like, we've talked about this before with New York as our prime example. Every New York hero somehow manages to exist in their complete and only little bubble of their neighborhood. I mean, Doctor Strange had an entire monster sent after him, ended up being from the Scarlet Witch, but like is out there fighting this one-eyed monster alien octopus thing just to be like, oh no, Spider-Man, don't come help. I got this.
Even though he helped Spider-Man in the movie before.
Right. Or like, no, Luke Cage, who actually would probably be very helpful and strong in this moment, don't help me. We don't know each other. You don't answer that call. It's outside of Harlem. Like, I don't get it. And I think in this case, you can't do that. You can't.
I
You
agree.
can't play that game. And so I think we deserve to see a team being led by Matt specifically. He's the OG, to your point. He's the OG vigilante. Put them all together. And that's the only way you're going to take down Kingpin. Like, that's all you're going to be able to do here. But I also want to talk about, because we're kind of talking about like season 2 as a whole and like what's to come. And I feel like because we're talking about the large scale of this, I'd be remiss not to say we have Thunderbolts in about 3 weeks, 2 weeks. And that takes place in New York, where apparently we have Sentry, who is like a black hole and is like sending people into oblivion. And that's what I've gathered so far from trailers. Again, taking place in New York City. So I'm trying to understand timeline wise, is this going to be before Daredevil? Because if not, I should be seeing effects here. This is one of those things again that cannot live in a bubble.
I agree. I mean, you can't have the mayor of the city in which your movie takes place not feature if that's a huge storyline going on in the universe. It's a connected universe for a reason. We brought Daredevil into the wider universe for a reason. That leads me to believe that Thunderbolts takes place before Daredevil. Yeah. Because I don't think that they were going to add in these elements into the film. I think there's going to be a lot going on. There's a lot of names on that roster. And I just think this is one additional element to complicate that. So I think they will have to find a way to subtly hint, like, hey, look, there's the, like, I don't know how they do it, but like, there has to be something where maybe,
Well, even if they are like, yeah, the mayoral races are going to be in November or something, like something subtle to be like, okay, so the mayor has not, like a new mayor has not been put in yet. Therefore, Kingpin's not in office.
or even if Valentina just drops the mayor's name and it's not Fisk, it could just be his predecessor, you know?
Yeah, but I feel like if you at least kind of say, or like could be like, oh, he might be up for re-election. So we know the election's coming. Because if you're just like mayor, blah, 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 and I'm like, oh, okay, I assume that's the predecessor, but maybe we're past Daredevil. Like, like I'd rather kind of have the hint of being like, no, the election would be coming up.
Fair. Yeah, I mean, look, I think you bring up a good point. I don't think they're going to tie them. I think they have done, I mean, someone actually pointed out in one of our comments, like, they've done a lot to literally dance around tying anything together, which is part of the issue. But, whatever. I can talk about that till my face turns blue and suddenly, like, they're still not going to do anything. I don't think they're going to tie them together. I think there's a lot of opportunity to do it. I mean, you've got Fisk and the Thunderbolts. That's literally like a thing in the comics, but whatever. Who am I to talk about their own comics?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I was hoping there'd be a tie, but I do think, to your point, the safest way is to avoid it. It's a shame because I think it could be a really interesting thing to factor into,
It's
but you
meaty.
have done something. Well, and you've done something just so big that you can't really, you are going to have to draw the line. You either have it affect whatever you're making, or you have the other thing take place before and or super far after. Like you can't really do anything differently there.
You know what this is? This is Loki all over again. Like, the level of ramifications should be so wide,
No, you're so
yet they
right.
keep continuing to put out projects that do not address it. And it just makes you wonder when everything takes place. But am I wrong?
No, unfortunately. I mean, you're not wrong. It's such a wide net. I mean, let's be real. Theoretically, we might be getting Spider-Man before we get the second Daredevil season. How's that going to work?
I think we're gonna get season 2 earlier in the year. I do. I think it's gonna come out before.
Theoretically, let's just say, but it could be possible we could get it before.
It definitely is. I just think they're gonna try to avoid that can of worms. Like, if I was them, I'd be like, I would like to write my way out of this problem.
I just think it's like one of those things, in my opinion, where like if you're gonna do it across the universe. Make it crazy. Do what you're doing. Tell the stories.
Look, I don't want them to minimize it at all because I think this storyline is truly so powerful in what it could do and how it could shape the universe.
No, you know what this is, Taylor? Which is a better comparison, so it's not because it's not multiversal. It's Secret Invasion,
You're so right. They're gonna nerf this.
where we have an entire invasion of Skrulls who are taking over people's bodies, and then we're never gonna address it again.
Oh, they did say something in this show.
Yeah, but because they felt bad that they haven't talked about Secret Invasion in 2 years.
I'm not saying it is at all making what they did to Secret Invasion okay, but like, if they do that with the Mayor Kingpin storyline where they choose to literally just in 2 years like reference it once, like, I actually will riot. Like, I don't, for them, like, to take iconic and large and important storylines, like, I would say in terms of level of impact, obviously Secret Invasion was like global, so like whatever, but Mayor Kingpin's storyline is very much maybe just like one step down from that in terms of impact, I would say. And so, like, if they're gonna do these storylines and they're the storylines that Marvel's going to select to bring to life, I want them to commit. Like, don't be scared. I feel like they're playing chicken where they're like, how far can we take it? But like without actually taking it and giving it the full meat. And that's the problem. Is they're like afraid to go all the way, but in doing so, they're just weakening these incredible storylines.
I agree. That's why I'm kind of bringing up these examples of places where I'm like, you could have had this affect other stories, and you're probably not going to, and that's what sucks. I think season 2 is going to be very exciting. I'm excited for it. I'm excited for the direction I hope it goes. I hope they have figured out their footing now and we're not going to have like a copy and paste of like 2 different seasons. But I do want to see this kind of affect bigger things. And I think my bigger issue is like going into this, we had like 3 properties that in some way, shape, or form built into Daredevil. We had Echo. We had Spider-Man. We had She-Hulk.
Hawkeye.
We had Hawkeye. That's a great I totally forgot about Hawkeye, and that one really fed into this.
Yeah.
Like, I always forget about it because then we had Echo, and I just think about Echo then.
It's like now 2 steps removed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we had 4 properties where we either saw Daredevil or the story actually affected, like, we saw these characters kind of mold from where they are now and where they started in Hawkeye, Echo, especially Kingpin. Like, those are his,
Yeah.
and they were important to how we got to where we got. And so I think it's a shame if we suddenly put this in a silo.
I totally agree. They've done a really good job of integrating it thus far, and if they choose at its biggest moment, at its zenith,
She might come back.
She-Hulk.
Maya.
Oh, you all can't see me. This is a verbal podcast. It's
That
audio
would
only.
be magnificent.
Why
This is
wasn't
when
she
you bring
here
her
this
back.
far? Like, why? I understand she made the choice to stay with her family, and I respect the heck out of that.
No, this is when you bring her back.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I'm actually shocked that she wasn't incensed by him becoming mayor.
I mean, same, but also I don't think he's even been mayor like low-key a month.
That's true. He works quickly.
So to be fair, she could be like watching from the sidelines, seeing how this is gonna go. But like, that is when you bring her back. I could not tell you where you're gonna put Maya anywhere else except in this storyline for now. And so bring her back in season 2, have her be a part of that group that fights him because she has personal stake in all of this.
Yeah, I totally agree. I would love to see her again. I mean, honestly, I know Kate Bishop is about to go be a champion / Young Avenger, but she's got that dude, Jack, dated her mom.
Do you think the Young Avengers are gonna be involved in this?
I mean, a lot of them are East Coast based.
Look at episode 5.
I know. And we know Kamala's out there recruiting Cassie, so they don't shrink away from bicoastal travel. Billy was just in New Jersey. So I could see the threat of Kingpin affecting so many heroes or attracting so many heroes. Again, like, New York is such an important city. It is such a visible city. So for that to be literally run by a dictator within the United States, I mean, you're going to go bonkers at this one, but that's where Bucky Barnes is from. He's a congressman now. Like, there are a lot of things here, a lot of folks who are either from or still living in New York who are going to feel some kind of way about the fact that a known criminal is running it like is his own kingdom. Like, he is literally the king of New York. That's going to have some problems.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Like, the repercussions to this, I hope they actually follow it. I really do. I think it's worthwhile. I think it's a great story to tell if you aren't scared of stepping out of just being in the Daredevil Born Again Matt Murdock story.
Again, why bring him into the wider universe if you're just going to pigeonhole him anyway?
Which is ironic because you haven't pigeonholed him when you brought him in.
Right.
He made 3 other appearances.
And so look, like, maybe they don't. Maybe they go full throttle, and that is my hope for season 2. Don't hold back. I want it insane. I want to be gasping and falling over every episode.
Yeah, same.
That's all I ask. That's it. Well, I think because we are now turning our attention to season 2, this seems like a good place to end our coverage of season 1. It has been a roller coaster of emotions, but we'll be back next year with season 2, and of course, lots of things in between. You can follow us on your podcast platform of choice. We have a website that you can also check out. It is the hub for all things related to the show. And if you're looking forward or would be looking to support the show, you can do that via our Buy Me a Coffee link, which is linked in the show notes.
You guys can also follow us on our socials, which are linked in the show notes down below. And as we said, this ends our coverage of Daredevil Born Again Season 1. We are very excited about Season 2 coming hopefully next year. We had some ups and downs this season. We hope the kinks get ironed out, and we're excited on where we landed. So lots of good things hopefully coming in the Daredevil universe. But don't worry, we are moving right into Thunderbolt season. Our predictions episode, believe it or not, is coming out next week. We will have a special guest on with us, joining us for the predictions. So make sure you guys check that out as that comes out. And go get your tickets. That's a shout out to me as well.
Same.
Go get your tickets so you're ready to go. Yeah, right. See them and see it on the big screen. I am super excited for this movie. It's my number one pick of the year. So I cannot wait personally. But we hope you guys love Daredevil. We hope you guys are ready for Thunderbolts. And as always, Marvel just blew your mind. So let's talk about it.